my friends. Cary Nosler here. I call myself a health and fitness consultant and have the pleasure of being with the IMPaX group for years, talking about their wonderful products, taking their wonderful products as well, and certainly having the opportunity to meet all kinds of interesting people, very inspirational people who've been associated and are associated, again, with the IMPaX family. And one in particular, a gentleman that I've known for some time, Wayne Miles. Wayne and his wife Angie, the dynamic duo of the whole group. Wayne, you've always been a real inspiration to the whole IMPaX group because of your athletic prowess. The fact that, well, other people might want to walk from here to someplace, but you like to run twice as far as anyone would ever want to walk. You've been doing that for some time. You've had several health challenges along the way, and have, through your own tenacity and hopefully through the empowerment that you've gotten from IMPaX and the EnerPrime specifically, been able to keep coming back. And we'd like to find out more about your story, your life, your progress, and all the different things that make you Wayne Miles. Start with the athletic part, if you will, in terms of your interest in that area and how you got into specifically long distance running.
Well, I was too small to play football in high school, so I started running then and ran some in college as well, but then stopped. Didn't start again until after I'd been married about a year and had gained maybe 35 or 40 pounds. So I needed to start an exercise program and trim some weight off. So that's how I got involved in running again. As I aged, I got a little slower and found that I was still competitive though in distances beyond the marathon. Oh. So that's how I drifted into 50 Ks and 50 miles and 100-mile
So that's events. How you got there. I just wonder, when you started though, when you started running, was it kind of like, oh, I really liked running that much today. Oh, I'm going to run a little bit more tomorrow, then the next day and the next day, and you just kept going until you kind of found out what your real pleasure was in terms of distance?
I don't know. I would have played any sport, and I would have been a sprinter had I been that fast. The problem was that I couldn't keep up with some people, so I drifted off to longer distances. Gotcha. And in high school, and ended up running the mile and the 2 mile, and then ended up running 5-kilometer events and that sort of thing. And
so, what was your first really long distance race?
Probably the run around Lake Tahoe, which is 72 to 73 miles, depending just upon how they do it. But I was up at Tahoe with the family and saw these crazy people in shorts, and they had numbers on, and they were running along the highway. And I thought, wow, they've got some sort of race up here. I hadn't heard about a race up here. And so we went and drove around the lake some and went on a picnic and I think gambled some. Anyway, we found ourselves back on the highway in the afternoon, and I saw the same people still running. Oh my goodness. I thought, that's absurd, and nobody does that. So I had to investigate a little bit, and found out that there was actually this race around the lake, and I thought, well, nobody does that. That's crazy. So obviously I had to do it the next year. You couldn't even run that race if you hadn't run a couple of marathons. At that time, I hadn't even run a marathon. So the next year I had to run longer distances for training, then run a couple of marathons, and then enter this 73-mile event around Tahoe.
That was quite a training year then, I would imagine.
It was a good year, yeah. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about my knees, my ankles, and recovery. And
well, speaking of recovery, now tell me if this is true. I'm trying to remember the story as I heard it. Maybe it was from Angie, maybe it was from yourself. That after you'd been doing all this running, the toll it took on your body was quite dramatic, and it would take you some time to get ready to go again. And I think Andy told me that's about the time maybe you might have started taking EnerPrime to kind of find a little faster recovery time.
Well, that's very true. In my mid-40s, I found that it was tougher and tougher to be competitive. in the open division in particular, but even amongst the 40-year-olds, it was getting tougher. And so I was looking for a competitive edge,
right.
something I could do. And of course, you look to nutrition, you look at stress, you know, your quality of rest, all those kinds of things. So absolutely. And at the time, I knew Roger Taylor, my dentist, and he was a triathlete.
Right.
And so I talked to him, and he wanted to use me sort of a guinea pig, and he introduced me to EnerPrime, and so I began taking it as something that was going to make me more competitive. It didn't do that. It really changed my life, because what it did was I found that I rested so much better. Mm-hmm. I had a higher quality of sleep so that I could train harder more often. That's what happened, and that's what improved me and made me more competitive, was just the fact that nutritionally my muscles recovered better, and I had less stress.
Right.
And then, of course, the sleep, the quality of sleep that I got was fantastic. So I became much more competitive. And then when I became 50, at 51, I won the national championship at 50 miles and posted that year the third best time for any individual over age 50 Wonderful. In the world.
Wow.
So kind of that's what happened to me with EnerPrime. And
that's interesting you mentioned that, because I think as those of us who are older athletes have found out that you can put a lot of effort into, let's say, the performing part, but what's really key is how well you recover after you've done what you've done, so that you can come back and hit it at that high level again.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I could drift away from that just
Sure.
a little bit, you know, you know that I've had cancer a number of times.
Well, I was going to mention that, yes.
Well, my first cancer in 2002 was squamous cell cancer in my neck, and I was inoperable for a long period of time. No one would operate on me, and basically they just wanted to medicate me, make me comfortable until I died. And for 3 or 4 years, every medical professional I spoke with just told me, "You're going to die." And they wanted me on a morphine drip and those kinds of things. But because of my fitness, I was able to tolerate treatments, and I had a desire to sort of fight the disease. Not so much, it's not really a fight, it's just a willingness to go through all the treatment protocols and the discomforts and things like that.
That's almost like running too, like a recovery. You know, in order for that to work, you have to recover from what they're doing to you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because the medications they're giving you are, you know, they kill people. Yes. And I was going through treatment with, you know, you see the same group of people all the time, because you're on the same treatment protocol.
Right.
And initially I went in and people would be well dressed and they would engage you in conversation, and you're there for treatment just like they are. And over time, many people lost the desire for the fight, I think, and they wouldn't dress as well. They wouldn't engage in conversation. You could tell they were unkept. They wouldn't shave, you know, those kinds of things. And eventually, the nurses would, you know, you'd get sort of a signal from them that this person wasn't going to make it, and that wasn't going to be me. You know, I was going to find a way through this. Eventually found a doctor that would operate on me, and I had a radical neck dissection, and you know, only less than a third of the people that had a radical neck dissection survived surgery. And I recall the doctor, James Yee, that operated on me, apologized to me, and he said he'd never lost a patient in surgery, and he was afraid I'd be his first. And you know, I was really taken aback, but I said, "You're the only chance I've got. No one else will even try."
So he was apologizing before he did the operation.
Yeah, but I was willing to take the chance
right.
that I could survive, because at that point, no one gave me a chance. But what happened was, the surgery took about 9 hours, and I survived. And I was going to be in ICU for a week, and then I was going to be in the hospital for 3 weeks in recovery. Well, I was in the ICU for maybe 36 hours. I was in the hospital for 4 days, and I came out and I went back to work on a half-day basis. And the doctor said, "Man, you're fit, and you eat right, and you don't seem to have any stress." And I said, "Well, I'm doing." He said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm taking EnerPrime. I'm doing these things." My wife, she had the whole thing, because she was in charge of my health.
Right,
let me tell you, my wife.
Right, absolutely.
She's in charge, and so he was very impressed with my level of fitness, with the way that we ate, the supplements we took, and he presented my case, and it is really what he presented to the ear, nose, and throat specialist was the impact of fitness on recovery, major surgical recovery, and I certainly did that.
So you start when you were taking the EnerPrime when you were running. Did you up the dose at all during the phase of your cancer treatment, or keep the same?
I'm sure it was increased, but I don't know the specifics on that, because after the surgery and during radiation therapy, and I had 2 sessions of 35 treatments each, and then a break in the center, and then another, just to get everything. It was very painful. So Angie would make, any pasta sort of thing that was easy to eat, get things, make a smoothie, make EnerPrime for me, and then I would have to take lidocaine and take a mouthful of it, swish it around, and swallow it so that I could eat. And I had 6 to 8 minutes to eat over 1,000 calories. And eventually it would hurt so bad that I would just had tears, and my sinuses were running. And so I'd stop eating for a few hours, and then we'd do the same thing again. So I was eating 6 or 7 times a day, trying to get 1,000 calories a time in, while I could still handle it, because everything was so painful.
Goodness. But now that wasn't the end, though, of your cancer saga, right?
No, actually, I guess it seems that my second episode with cancer was a product of all the radiation I received in the first go-around. But, that's just the way it goes, because had I not had all the radiation the first time, I wouldn't have been alive to have cancer the second time,
Right.
that sort of thing. But we approached it the same way. It wasn't going to, it wasn't going to get us as a couple and a family.
But this one's a little different, though, because, again, as a runner, obviously your legs are very important, and you had some rather imposition in terms of the muscles in your legs here from this cancer.
Yes, I was running a 100-kilometer race in Bishop, California, and that's at altitude. And I had a miserable day, and my left quadricep was painful all day. And it felt as though I'd been stung by a few wasps or something. I had that stinging sensation. Each stride was just, really tough. Got to the finish, and there happened to be a nurse, co-runner, friend of mine, that kind of checked out my leg and felt the lump and said, "Well, I had that checked out. With your history, probably ought to have it checked out." I did. And, it just seemed like, well, it wasn't any problem. It ought to come out, but it's probably just, a fatty cyst or something. Well, they surgically removed it, biopsied it, and it was a sarcoma that was standing up. It was about as big as my thumb, and it was sitting on the bone. And so the assumption was that that I had bone issues as well. So anyway, Angie and I were on the computer, and now we're becoming experts on sarcomas and this sort of thing. And I realized that at my age and with my medical history, that the treatment protocol was amputation. And I was a little surprised, and I kind of, you know, I like having my legs. I want to move.
Yes.
So when I went in to see my orthopedic oncologist, to meet him for the first time, I went in running clothes as though I was going to go run a race. I had, you know, a singlet on and shorts and running shoes, and he came in the room with an assistant, and I stood up and I introduced myself and I said, I know how I look on paper, but this is me, and you know, this is my history. I've been a national champion. I've posted some world-class times. I've run nearly 100,000 miles in my life, and I want to save my leg. And I'm concerned that you might be thinking that you need to remove my leg to save my life. And we talked a little bit, and he made a phone call and canceled the surgery. That was on a Thursday when I met him, and my amputation surgery was scheduled for Tuesday.
Oh my goodness.
I came that close to losing my leg.
So before he even saw you, he had kind of had that scheduled.
That was what was going to happen. And
right.
From everything I read, that was what was going to happen. He said, we're going to rethink this. He made me no promises, but told me he would try to save my leg. And by golly, he saved my leg.
Wow.
It was great. But again, when he cut my leg open, because
right.
what happened initially, you know, they took the sarcoma out, but that whole area was cancerous, and then there was significant bleeding during the surgery. Well, everywhere that blood drifted within my leg, the cancer could have traveled. So I again received radiation, and I've got the tattoos, you know, the radiation tattoos all over, and they treated a large area, you know, my whole leg basically. But after that treatment, I had a resection. So they basically removed kind of like half a football of my whole quadricep muscle. And when he did that, and he remarked that the quality of muscle was something he wasn't used to seeing in someone that was over age 60. And so he wanted to know what I was doing for my fitness and nutrition-wise and that sort of thing. And so again, you know, I realized through that process that over the years that I was taking EnerPrime, it was not a supplement to my diet. It was my foundation. You know, the EnerPrime and Prostalon and the other products I was taking were my baseline, and I was eating to supplement that, because on a daily basis with the even doses of EnerPrime I was getting, my body was thriving.
Yes.
You know? So I was fit, but within the cells and the muscles, each time they cut me open, they were surprised at what they saw in someone my age. I mean, that didn't happen by accident.
Right.
You know, I was really fortunate.
Yeah, and you were fortunate in many ways. Not only have the good doctors, but there are people undergoing cancer therapy who really do, in a sense, starve to death because of the stress that the body is going through creates a need for really a lot more nutrients on the part of the body. And if you don't get it in some way, shape, or form, you create deficits. And you, with the work you were doing with Angie's help, you were being supplied with something that could help your body as best as possible in that situation.
Right, right.
But now, that's great. You're over those two, minding your own business, out for a nice bike ride, and lo and behold, the universe has another plan at that moment.
That's right. I started riding a bicycle about 3 or 4 years ago because I have arthritis in my hips and in my knees, my ankles, and I decided that I could move to the bicycle,
right. Take
some pounding off of my joints, and maintain that cardiovascular fitness for myself. And in middle of January, I was out with some guys I ride with these guys every Thursday. I'm kind of the middle-aged guy. You know, I'm creeping up on 70 here pretty quick. But there's some guys in their 70s I'm riding with, and guys over age 60. But we were out on a probably 40 to 50 mile bike ride, and on some back roads. We started after the commute hour because it would be safer, and I was third in the line of guys. And a young woman was driving her car and was distracted and took me out. And I was riding my bicycle, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw a flash, and I could hear the engine. And as I glanced over, I tried to unclip from the bicycle. I saw the car, and in just that instant, I wanted to unclip, and I wanted to ride the momentum of the car into the bushes, and hoping that would, you know, that inertia would be absorbed by bushes and that sort of thing. I really didn't want to be sucked under her car, and I know enough about bicycle accidents that if the tire of the car catches your bicycle, it will flop the bike on the ground and drag you under the car. You don't want that. Well, that's what happened. I didn't get unclipped with my left foot. She hit my leg before I got unclipped, and I was immediately flopped to the ground on the bike. And I then was fighting to stay away from the tires, and I you know, it happened very quickly, but it might as well have taken 2 hours for me, because it played in slow motion as I broke the handlebars, both sides of the handlebars. And as I scraped along the pavement, I had road rash on my hip, and it just disintegrated my helmet. So it was a mess.
Sounds like it hurts.
But it broke everything below my left knee,
right.
same leg as the cancer was in, and I was in trouble. When all the motion stopped, she was in a full-size Dodge SUV with the Hemi engine, and the passenger side front tire was on my leg and had me pinned to the ground. And I was in a lot of pain from all kinds of things. But what happened with that tire being on my calf muscle is that it squeezed all the fluid out of my calf muscle, and that fluid became a series of blisters on the inside of my lower left leg, and that later on that skin all had to be removed, because if you just puncture it and drain it, it's going to refill. So I ended up with hamburger everywhere. So I went back. I had my wife call UC Davis and my orthopedic oncologist there, tell him what had happened. It's the same leg. Do you want to see me? They said, great. So in we went. They couldn't sew me up. There was such a mess, they couldn't do anything about it. So broken bones and all, they sent me home. And a month later, after I had some healing, we went back to the hospital, and they got to re-break the bones and set everything. Oh my goodness. and I still had some problems, so I didn't get to be in a cast. They put me in a soft boot. And my poor wife, for several months, maybe as many as 3 months, you know, cleaned my wounds every third day, made sure I didn't have any infection, and put up with me, because not being able to be outdoors and active, I got cabin fever pretty bad, pretty fast.
Yeah.
So,
mentally, you weren't in as good a state as you would have liked to be.
No. You know, even though I was taking EnerPrime, I was stressed.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, unfortunate you had gone through all of that stuff, but at least fortunately, through some action in the past, being introduced to EnerPrime and the other products, at least you had that opportunity to get that advantage that you needed to keep coming back each time.
Absolutely, yeah. And today, I mean, I've got plans. I'm planning on going to Leadville, which is called the 2 Mile High City in Denver, or Colorado rather, and the doctor that did my neck is entered in a 100-mile race there in August, I'm not in very good shape, but I'm going there to crew him, and I'm going to accompany him for however far he needs me. And so I'll bury myself. But I mean, I've got plans like that. I'm going to go there. I want to do events myself.
Right.
And I've got bicycle races, 100-mile events that I want to go on. And all those kinds of
I
things.
have no doubt you're going to do it. And you're truly an inspiration, and just a pleasure to talk to you. And I thank you so much for sharing your story.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.